welcome back. We've been talking about the problems, troubles with lessons learned. And we got as far as understanding that there's no way to pretty it up. The real problem, the real trouble that we all face with lessons learned is in the learning part. Failure to learn. How are we going to correct that? I promised I would come back and talk about ways to address this terrible, terrible situation of reoccurring lessons learned files. Honestly, if your lessons learned file looks exactly the same this year as it did the previous time and the previous time before that, that's what we want to address. So how are we going to fix that? So the important thing about a lessons learned activity is that it closes with follow-up. And I might have been speaking in plural as if I had a whole basket load of suggestions for the way to chase this kind of thing down, but I don't. I do this myself through tracker systems, right? And that's changed a lot. And back in my day, I had built in a decision log and activity tracker to my SharePoint page for the team. That was how I was doing it back then, and I don't even know if I can remember the coding for that or whether you can still do that in the modern SharePoint, and you wouldn't need to anyway. There's 100 other ways to do it. So whichever way that you would typically track things in your organization, and I'm going to assume somebody's doing task tracking somewhere because this is, after all, 2025. What I want to say about the tracking, though, is the same thing that I made a point about way back when we were talking about the RACI for the turnaround process. I want you to think of it that exact same way. It doesn't do any good in these types of things to speak in generalities. So we're going to create a tracker for the given activity. Let's say it's the activity that was in the previous video where we discovered that if the turnaround support plan from administration doesn't include some kind of training, the LEMs are going to be all messed up, something like that. And we're most likely going to assign the person who wrote that current administrative support plan. And I'm hoping there was a support plan and that this is just a missed piece. Either way, we're going to take that same activity. There has to be a support plan, and this just becomes further proof of it. And in the support plan, we're going to need that, training log situation that we talked about in the last video. So I want to see that person's name there. That doesn't get assigned to, a generality like a particular office or a particular group. That gets assigned to a person. And additionally on that, I want to see the accountable party. And the accountable party would be whoever that person answers to, right? We want the accountable party there because here comes the hard part. Senior leadership has to be engaged in order for any of this kind of stuff to work. And it's just the way, we're humans, we're weak. I don't know any other way to put it. Senior leadership needs to be engaged, and we're going to add them into this tracker event. We're going to put a due date. Say it's 3 months out. We're going to have a new administrative team support plan that's going to include the suggested training protocol, yada, 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 and we're going to have that by some date 3 months out. If that date comes and goes, right, and that activity has not been cleared as complete, an email goes out to everybody, including that senior leader. And at this point, the optimum thing is that the senior leader immediately picks up the phone and calls the accountable party to learn about why, there seems to be a deficiency happening in his team or her team. And maybe there's a good explanation for it, right? Like maybe it would have just been impossible for whatever reason. I don't even want to speculate what that would be, but that's where it starts. And that pressure doesn't let up. Even if there is a good reason for it, it is still imperative that this task get done. And if we have to assign somebody else, then let's just say that, assign somebody else. but the task is going to get done, and somebody has to be held responsible for it, and somebody has to be held accountable for it. Otherwise, it's just back to the last video, the trouble with lessons learned, failure to learn. How can we help? Well, if you're already in a situation where leadership has engaged an Advando senior advisor on subscription, then somebody like myself is going to be around anyway. And most likely in that case, we would have helped facilitate your lessons learned study, and we would also help you generate those necessary tracker cards, making sure that everybody understands how it works. So that's how we can help. And I don't know of any other way to fix this problem. But since we started earlier in the week, I'm sure getting a lot of comments coming in my DMs and in public posts about, how common this is. It shouldn't be common. No thing should ever show up on a lessons learned file more than once. If it ever shows up more than once, then we need to just accept we are doing it wrong. Have a nice day. Talk to you next time. Peace out.